I am Heather Allison. I am a fine art and commercial photographer based in Los Angeles, California. What's your background? How does this impact how you see the world and create art? Did your upbringing prompt a specific reference point within your work? Is your work informed by certain concepts or themes from your childhood, background, socioeconomic status, and where you lived or were raised? So, I grew up in New England, but moved to California when I was 20. My parents are both artists. My mom was an illustrator for Disney when they still worked in cell animation, and she is a painter. She has been a painter for decades. My father was a commercial photographer. Art was always a huge part of my life. Whenever we went on family vacations, museums were always on the schedule. My parents had huge bookshelves in my childhood home filled with art, design, photography books, and I would spend hours paging through them whenever I could. My dad was sent all over the world on assignment, and listening to him and his assistants talk about their adventures on shoots had me hooked from a young age. All I ever wanted to be was a photographer, too. I began my career in photojournalism. I moved into commercial and advertising work. And then, following the death of my father, I was inspired to move into fine art photography. There was a point when I considered a career in curation or museum studies. I do have a background in art history, but ultimately decided to pursue a master's in photography because it's something I can't live without. Seeing both my parents make careers in the arts in their own ways did really inspire me to pursue a similar path. It gave me the confidence to do it. All I ever wanted was to be a photographer, to paint with light, to connect with people through my work. And my path was not a straight line. I changed practices and approaches multiple times. I went back to school, earned a BFA in art history, thinking I would work in the art world behind the scenes. But in the end, I realized merging my studies of the Northern Renaissance and the Dutch masters with my own experience was how I would create meaningful work. And I'm really grateful for the value my parents placed on art and the exposure I had to it growing up. I don't know that I would have followed the path I have if it weren't for that. My upbringing definitely inspired me to be an artist, but it was a specific event in my life that influenced my current body of work and career path and practice, and that was the death of my father. I had never felt grief as I did, and honestly still often do after he died. His passing, it was so painful. I thought I might abandon photography completely. At that point in time, we were building a studio together. He was exploring fine art photography in his own work, and I was working in the commercial field. I dissolved the business and pursued a bachelor's in art history. But it was during those studies that I realized it would be through photography I could keep that deep connection that I had with my dad and really continue to grow it. I was inspired by the Vanitas paintings of the 17th century that I was researching and writing so much about, and wanted to see if I could heal and explore my grief through my own version of these tableaux that remind people of their own mortality. This was when my practice really changed completely and brought me to where I am now. Who are your biggest influences? I mean, my dad will always be my biggest influence. He inspired me to become a photographer in the first place, and he was always so encouraging and loving and excited about what I was doing. That will always stay with me. But of course, there are other photographers such as Joel Peter Witkin, Zeke Harvey, Irene Penn, Robert Mapplethorpe, who influenced my work as well, especially since their still life work is so different than my own. Each of these photographers has such a distinct approach to their imagery. When you see something by them, you know immediately it's a Wickham, it's a Mapplethorpe. I also really connect with Sally Mann's work, and you can just see the passion and the love that she has for imagery in everything she does, and whatever it is that she's photographing. The Dutch masters and Italian Renaissance painters inform my work as well. Their application of light and detail is incredible. Rachel Reusch was a 17th century painter specializing in flowers who invented her own style when it came to still life work, and her paintings completely draw me in. There are other 17th century painters like Jan Bruegel the Younger, Margaretha Heverman, Wilhelm Klaus Ada, and Peter Clauses. Rembrandt's depiction of light will always serve as inspiration and influence my own lighting. And Caravaggio is another painter whose depiction of light just fascinates me endlessly. What are you focusing on right now? For as long as I can remember, I have been preoccupied with human mortality. And as I mentioned, it was my own personal experience with the unexpected loss of my father due to complications with chemotherapy that initially inspired me to turn my focus toward fine art and still life genre with an emphasis on grief. This exploration led to the creation of a body of work titled Awaken, where I indulge my fixation and construct vanitas tableaux that reflect on death, a once normalized approach to acknowledging mortality and appreciating the beauty of life. So continuing to build this body of work is my biggest focus currently. Through these carefully crafted still life photographs that are digitally captured and brimming with hidden messages, iconography, emphasis on color, I seek connection to the dead and delve into the complexities of grief, and in doing so, I heal and reclaim and elevate the categorization of still life as an art form. So the images from this body of work really offer an intimate experience for the viewer, encouraging inner contemplation on our ever-evolving relationship with the transient nature of life. And they also provide a safe space for mourning and connection, where you encounter someone who has experienced grief as you have. Because when you do, everything changes. And that is so important for me. I don't think that this project will ever be closed or complete, to be honest, because even as you heal, the grief stays with you. It never leaves. It does change, but it changes with you. What is the biggest challenge of being an artist? For me, one of the biggest challenges is finding a balance between all of the administrative work you have to do while making studio time and staying inspired to create new artwork. Between applying for grants, submitting work to be considered for exhibition, self-promotion, all that is expected with social media, paperwork, taxes, shipping pieces to galleries, it can be really easy to lose track of the work itself, and the studio time can get pushed off. But the same can happen in reverse, where I spend so much time in the studio creating, nothing really moves forward outside of it. What no one really tells you when you're in art school is that you will not only be an artist, but you will also be a small business owner too. What advice would you give to your younger self? Don't stop, ever. Listen to yourself, create what is in your head, create what is in your heart. Don't get distracted with people suggesting a more contemporary look or approach. Trust in your vision. Have you ever tried any unconventional mediums or techniques? I have experimented with alternative processing techniques in photography, such as Van Dyke Brown, the use of encaustics and cyanotype. I really enjoy all these techniques, but for my current practice, they didn't quite fit. They don't really fit. I really need the color in the images I create to speak. Uh, I need the highly detailed and produced tableau. I need the neatness of them. Do you listen to music or any other type of background noise while you work, or do you prefer complete silence? I do usually have background noise on. I listen to a lot of podcasts as I work. Usually they're art themed or true crime. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. If I listen to music, it's often classical. I really do love a requiem while I work. What is the best reaction someone has had to your work? This happened pretty recently. Last fall at Saatchi's other art fair, a collector came into my space and was taking everything in, and she actually took the time to read the artist statement that I had hanging alongside the work. I looked over at her again a few minutes later and realized she was crying. We made eye contact and started talking. She had lost her mother recently and said so much of what I had written spoke to her deeply. We ended up talking for quite a while just about grief, mourning, art, the work itself, how I got into it. Being able to talk to somebody else about death and our experiences together, it just makes such a difference. It was really amazing. And honestly, anytime someone finds something in my work, it is meaningful to me. I've had people tell me specific images remind them of their grandmother, dad, mother, sister, and that is everything. Of course, the work has specific personal meaning to me, but when someone sees their own experience in it, that really is everything. What do you hope people take away from your artwork? I hope people take away connection and knowledge that they are not alone. My work aims to really break the silence surrounding grief, honoring the tradition of public mourning, while also creating a meaningful and introspective space for individuals to connect with their emotions and shared experience of loss. So let's see. I can let you know about upcoming events and social handles. I'm definitely most active on Instagram, and you can find me at Veneration of Light, all one word. I do have my website, which is heatherallisonphotography.com. You can find original works there, limited run prints, find all of my most updated, events, scheduled shows, things like that. And this year, I'm really focused on taking my art out in the world. I've got about 16 art markets on the schedule right now, all over the US. And I'm also considering a residency in France in the fall and really hope I can pull that one off. I would do update my schedule on both Instagram and my website whenever anything new comes up. And I will definitely do so as soon as the art fairs and exhibitions that I plan to show with are confirmed as well. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.